Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to the next lecture, and we shall pick it up where we left off from the last lecture video. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to continue with what Socrates had been talking about with regards to knowledge, right? So if you had paid attention to the last lecture, you would have realized that for Socrates, it is very essential, right? It is very essential for anybody, right? If anybody in politics, whoever thinks that they can look after the welfare of the people, right? If they join politics for the welfare of the people, then they ought to know where the society stands, right? Where it stands, where are the weaknesses, where it needs to be changed, right? Those sort of things. And if you look at an example from last time, for instance, if you remember, Socrates was having a conversation with Clarke, right, the brother of his student Plato. So Clarke he was very young, ambitious, and he thought he wanted to be the leader. He wanted to be the leading statesman of Athens. So he wanted to go in front of the audience in the Athenian assembly and wanted to make a name for himself and advise the Athenians with regards to how well they should operate and they should function. But then Socrates stops him, right? If you remember, Socrates stops Clarke and he asks Clarke, well, if you are that interested to become the leading statesman, the leading politician in modern sense, if you are that ambitious to become the leading statesman of Athens, then you ought to know how to increase the welfare, right? Advance the welfare of the society. So he asks Clarke, now tell me, surely if you want to increase the welfare of the society, then one of the ways to make it better is to increase the wealth of your society, right? Of your society. And so Socrates asked Clarke, well, do you have any idea where Athens gets our expenses? From where do we get our revenues? What are our expenditures, right? What are the expenses? Like, what are the tax collections? And then he asks Clarke, now tell me about those things. Clarke says, well, I do not know. Okay, then Socrates says, okay, then let's move on. What about increasing the security of our society, Athens, right? So what about our army? Do you know where our armies are stationed, right? How many soldiers do we have, right? How many garrisons do we have? Clarke says, I have no clue, right? Okay, well, but do you know the strength of your enemies, right? Clarke says, I have no clue. You see, now the passage here, the story which we are talking of, is that it's very relevant. It's in a metaphorical sense, what Socrates had been dealing with is relevant even to this day. Even to this day, if you inquire and if you observe the society in which you live, then you would realize that there are so many individuals who wants to be politicians, right? Who wants to be the leader. But do they actually know what is wrong with the society? Do they actually know how to increase the welfare of the society? Right? Do they actually know, to use Socrates' words, do they actually know the art of politics? And for Socrates, the art of politics is to make people into a better human being. That's the whole aim of politics, right? According to Socrates. You join politics not for the welfare, not to increase your own self-interest, not to increase your wealth and property, but you join politics, right, so that you make the people living in your society a better human being. That's the whole essence of politics. That's why for Socrates, ethics cannot be separated from politics. Of course, if you look at the way politics functions nowadays, and even then in his days, then it would seem rather idiotic to think that there's such a thing as ethics in politics, right? But Socrates says there is a need for ethics in politics, and for that, and for Socrates, this ethics, this art of politics, is all about having knowledge, right? Knowledge about, if you are to be the leading statesman of your society, then you must know your society well. You can't have a superficial idea about your society and what is wrong with the society. Everybody knows a superficial idea. Everybody can pinpoint in a superficial sense, in a very shallow sense, what is wrong with the society. But if you actually start to scratch the surface and try to go a bit deeper, most of us have no idea what we are talking about, have no idea what the problems are, the actual problems are. Most of us do not know where the roots of the problems lie, and most of us do not know, absolutely have no idea, absolutely have no clue as to how to fix the problem, right? Just like Glacon. We only show off just because, just as Glacon came from a very affluent, very rich family, right? From a very good background, much in the same way, even nowadays, even in society, say, because we are in Nagaland, to use an example of Nagaland, even in Nagaland, you have so many youngsters, so many young individuals who wants to join politics, who wants to be the leader. But if you go and ask them, what is it that you're trying to increase the welfare of your society? How are you going to increase the welfare of the society? They will have no clue. If you try to ask them, do you have an idea about the problems that are being faced by the society? They will say yes, because they have a very shallow understanding of the problems of the society. And if you ask them any deeper, and if you scratch beneath the surface and try to dig a bit deeper and ask them how do you fix it, they will have no idea as to what is wrong with the society and how to fix it, because they are part of the problem. You see, because they are part of the problem, they have no clue as to how to fix the problem. The only way to fix the problem is that they should just go away and just find some other profession. But nevertheless, in all seriousness, if you look at the way for instance, most of the student federations, if you think about it, most of the student federations, they are all wannabe politicians, just like Glacon. And say, for instance, you are the Socrates, you can play the role of the Socrates, and if you ask them what is wrong, they'll have no idea, right? They are there they want to join politics, and they want to be in politics precisely because they are there only for self-interest, right? They are there only for self-interest and nothing else. Society is a far cry for them. So, much in the same way, as we can see, Socrates is trying to emphasize the essentiality and the importance, right, of knowledge. And just to give you an example, let us read the passage from, if you have the reading materials with you, it's page number 205, right? Over here, let's read the passage together, right? It says a lot, right? So, this is what it is, right? The passage. Do we wonder then, Socrates, that all the evils that turn out to occur in such constitutions, that is, all existing types, and all those that will turn out for them, when the foundation of this sort underlies them, one of carrying out their functions according to written rules and customs without knowledge. You see, what this passage is, if you pay attention, the passage actually is from here, right? It continues from here. Plato was having a conversation, right, from Plato's Apology, and he was talking about how he failed to find any sort of wisdom in among the politicians, right? So he's talking about how in all of Athens, right? In all of Athens, there was no wiser person than he, and he, Socrates, was trying to refute that, right? So he goes and meets the politicians, the leading politicians, those leaders and thinkers and intellectuals who the society acknowledges to be the leaders, who society acknowledges to be full of wisdom and knowledge. But he finds that these people who the society acknowledges to be filled with wisdom and knowledge actually have no idea what they are talking about, actually have no clue, have no knowledge about things which they claim to know of. And when Socrates shows that to these people, they get offended, right? And they don't, and then they begin to dislike Socrates, and so are all the jamjas, right? All the lackeys of those politicians and leaders. What I'm trying to say is this: what Socrates from the passage, right? What Socrates is trying to make us understand is that if most of our leaders in society, if most of our leaders have no idea, have no clue, have no knowledge of that which they claim to know, then the society will be in chaos, right? The society will be in disorder, right? And if this is so, right, for instance, and if this is so, then why wouldn't the society be in disorder, right? For instance, look at the example of Nagaland, right? Because most of our leaders, right? Obviously, it would be very imprudent of me to say all the leaders, but just to be modest, most of our leaders, most of the politicians and the leaders and the tribal leaders or whatnot, they have no idea, they have no knowledge of things, about things that they claim to know, right? They proclaim to the society, they have this appearance, right, in front of the society, saying that they know a lot, right? That they know a lot, and then they are right for the job. But then, in reality, they have no clue. And because our society is ruled or is led by people who are ignorant about the most important things in politics, then why wouldn't Nagaland, for instance, be in total disorder? And it is in disorder, right? If you actually think about it. And those disorders are what? You have this corruption, rampant corruption, out of control corruption, mismanagement of funds, right? High degree of tribalism, right? High degree of resentful individuals and animosity between groups, right? This greed to accumulate material goods, material wealth. So, if there is not disorder, then I do not know what definition of disorder is, right? So, we are living in this kind of circumstances precisely because we have politicians, like Socrates says, who have no knowledge about that which they claim to know, right? In fact, they have no clue about things which they claim to know. They're ignorant, right? They're ignorant, that's what he's saying, right? So, here's a good idea. Here's a good passage from Socrates, right? Here we find, just to give you an explanation about what Socrates meant, right? So here we have Socrates, a passage from Socrates, from dialogue from Xenophon, right? So here he, as the subtitle suggests, it says Xenophon, Socrates, he's talking about the false pretenses of the orators or the politicians or the leaders, right? Pretenses, like to pretend something. And I hope that you know the meaning of pretend, right? So here, if we look at it, especially over here, the last paragraph over here, let's go through it together, right? And I want you to pay special attention to this because it tells a lot, right? So, Socrates, right? So this is Socrates saying, let's ponder, he says, right? He said, let's ponder what someone who isn't a good fluentist should do if he wants to be taught one. Shouldn't he imitate good flutists in the trapping of their art? To begin with, since they own fancy equipments and lead a sizable entourage, he could do the same. Next, since many people admire them, he should also recruit hordes of admirers. But by no means should he undertake an actual performance, or else he'll become a laughingstock and be exposed straight away as not just a poor flutist, but a fraud. Besides, if he spends a lot of money without deriving any benefits and earns a bad reputation on top of that, how could he avoid a life fraught with hardship, frustration, and derision? Right? Likewise, let's reflect on what would befall someone who wanted to appear to be a good commander or a boat pilot or a politician, supposing he weren't. Right? Now, this is what it is. You pretend to be somebody. So even to this day, even in Socrates' days, you had so many leaders, so many statesmen, so many politicians, right, who pretend to know things, who pretend to care for the society, who pretend that they have the knowledge, but in reality they don't. Much in the same way, even in this day and age, right, even today, for instance, in Nagaland or wherever you are, right, many politicians, they pretend to know things, right? They pretend to know things, but when it actually comes, whenever you ask them to actually carry out, because you assume that they have the knowledge, to resolve issues, to resolve the problems, they actually have no clue. One very good example I can think of about this pretense, or about this pretending to be a politician, pretending to be somebody else when you're actually not, is like, for instance, photographers, right? Nowadays in Nagaland and even in Northeast, you have so many photographers, right? So I'm assuming that you require some sort of a skill to be a professional photographer, right? Look at the photographers of National Geographic and Animal Planet. Those are some of the best photographers that you will find. And then now you have, some young kid who have too much time on his hand, just lazy and too much money. So he decides to buy an expensive photograph, right? He decides to buy an expensive camera, and then just because he has that expensive camera, the professional camera, from then on, just because he can afford to buy the camera, he now proclaims himself and he pretends himself to be a professional photographer, when in reality he has no idea about what photography is, right? So whenever you go and ask him, because you have this professional camera, can you take a professional picture about this, about that, right? But then in reality, whenever you ask that person to take the photograph, the quality of the photograph would be horrible, right? Would be horrid, right? Would be an assault to the senses, right? Much in the same way, you have, for instance, so many people, right? Not just young people, but so many people who dresses like $1 million, right? Who dresses as though they are very, very rich, that they come from a wealthy family. But then, in reality, they're struggling to survive. Their family is struggling to survive, but here they go. They wear expensive clothes as if they pretend to be somebody that they are not, right? They pretend to be somebody that they are not. And even, for example, you can look at, for instance, like the mentality of the people in Nagaland, right? For instance, the people in Nagaland, most people, almost all the people, right? Most people in Nagaland, they think that just because now they can afford, they have wealth and they can afford some sort of material things, and they can afford the luxuries of life. They assume, they pretend that they are progressing mentally, right? They pretend to appear that they're very, very advanced, but in reality, their outward appearance is a pathetic facade that hides their backward mentality, right? It is. So they think that just because they are rich, just because some group or some people are rich, they act as though they are the most enlightened people in the world. But then whenever it comes to whenever it comes to the issues of the society, they are absolutely tribal, right? Very, very narrow-minded people. So there you go. So you see, that's what happens. If I am not, say for instance, I don't play any kind of musical instruments, right? I don't play any kind of musical instruments. But say for instance, I want to pretend, right? I pretend that I know how to play musical instruments. I can buy a guitar. I can carry that guitar along with me wherever I go, giving the impression to the people that, yeah, hey, this guy really knows how to play a guitar. He must be a musician, right? They will think that. But in reality, I have no clue how to play the guitar, right? And unfortunately, if they were to tell me, can you play a musical, can you play us a song? Can you let us hear some musical tune, right, played by you, right, in that guitar? Then I would be dumbfounded, mainly because I will have no idea as to how to play the guitar, right? You see? And people will come to know that I'm a fraud, if that's the case, right? Right? So much in the same way, you have people or leaders pretending to be leaders, pretending to know things, when in reality they have no idea what they know. They have no idea what they're talking about. They have no idea about things which they claim to know, which they claim that they know, right? So yeah. So this is a good example, right, about what Socrates is trying to enlighten us about. And I think we have to take this seriously, right? I think we have to pay good attention to what he is saying about these things, right? And it is, I would say that it is not unrealistic, I suppose you can say that. It's funny because most people nowadays pretend to be like this a lot. Much in the same way, you have so many leaders who claim to know things when in reality they have no clue. And this goes the same, right? This is applicable even to all the wannabe, all the aspirant, what do you call it? Wannabe politicians, right? From a very young age. So that's not difficult to find. So I think you'll find examples, like it won't be difficult to find real life examples about what we are talking about. It will be, you see, but the problem is this, which Socrates, is really smart, or not, but wise to point it out to us. You see, whenever you try to point out the ignorance or the lack of knowledge by people who think that they know a lot, those corrections or those pointers are not taken in a very positive sense, right? People get offended, right? You may think that you know a lot, and for instance, if I try to correct you by showing your ignorance, then you will be offended. And who knows, I may think I know a lot, but if somebody were to rightly point out my mistakes and my ignorance, then instead of thanking that person, I would be very, very offended, right? So much in the same way, Socrates tries to show us this about this phenomena, right? About this phenomena in real life, right? So what we have here is a conversation, right? I want to show you. I would like to read the passage and then tell you about it, because I think this is very, very. It will be very, very helpful. It will help us understand better about the issues. You see, Socrates tries to. He's having a conversation with Callicles, right? And this conversation is quite interesting. It's very interesting, perhaps because it's one of the best examples that I could find from Socrates. And I would like you to it's an example which I like to bring up over and over again, because it is quite powerful. So he says this, right? So Socrates is having a conversation with Callicles, and then this is how the conversation goes. So Callicles says, "How sure you seem to me to be, Socrates, that not even one of these things will happen to you. You think that you live out their way, and that you wouldn't be brought to court, perhaps by some very corrupt and mean man. Socrates replies, "In that case, I'm really a fool. I really am a fool, Callicles, if I don't suppose that anything might happen to anybody in this city. But I know this well, that if I do come into court involved in one of those pearls which you mention, the man who brings me in will be a wicked man. For no good man would bring in a man who is not a wrongdoer. And it wouldn't be at all strange if I were to be put to death. Would you like me to tell you my reasons for expecting this?" Callicles says, "Yes, I would." So Socrates continues, I believe that I am one of a very few Athenians, so as not to say I'm the only one, but the only one among our contemporaries to take up the true political craft and practice the true politics. This is because the speeches I make on each occasion do not aim at gratification, but at what's best. They don't aim at what's most pleasant. And because I'm not willing to do those clever things you recommend, I wouldn't know what to say in court. And the same account I applied to Polus comes back to me. For I'll be judged the way a doctor would be judged by a jury of children if a pastry chef were to bring accusation against him. Think about what a man like that, taken captive among these people, could say in his defense. If somebody were to accuse him and say, "Children, this man has worked many great evils on you. Yes, on you. He destroys the youngest among you by cutting and burning them, and by slimming them down and choking them, he confuses them. He gives them the most bitter portions to drink and forces hunger and thirst on them. He doesn't feast you on a great variety of sweets that the way I do. What do you think a doctor got in such an evil predicament could say? Or if he should tell them the truth and say, 'Yes, children, I was doing all those things in the interest of health.' How big an uproar do you think such judges would make? Wouldn't it be a loud one? Perhaps so. I should think so. Don't you think he'd be at total loss as to what he should say? Yes, he would be. That's the sort of thing, right? And that's the sort of thing I know would happen to me too if I came into court. For I wouldn't be able to point out any pleasures that I have provided for them. Once they believe to be the services and benefits, while I envy neither those who provide them nor the ones for whom they are provided. Nor will I be able to say what's true if someone charges that I ruined younger people by confusing them, or abuse older ones by speaking bitter words against them in public or private. I wouldn't be able to say, that is, 'Yes, I say and do all these things in the interest of justice, my honored judges,' to use the expression you people use. Nor will I be able to say anything else. So, presumably, I'll get whatever comes my way." You see, and this is exactly what happened to him. You see, so Socrates is saying this, simply this, right? I mean, it's difficult. Whenever you try to point out the problems that are the ignorance of the leaders and politicians and all those people which the society acknowledges to be wise and knowledgeable, whenever you do so, whenever you do point out their faults and ignorance, it's not taken lightly, right? People don't accept those things in a positive sense. Rather, you become the target. You become the enemy, right? You become the enemy. And that's exactly what happened to Socrates, right? Socrates was accused because he would go and pinpoint the mistakes and ignorance of the Athenian leaders and politicians. So he met a lot of enemies like that. And so one day, the Athenians decided enough is enough, and then they cooked up some trumped up charges against Socrates, and then they brought him to, they imprisoned him, and then he was put in front of the judges, in front of the jury, to be judged, right? And the accusations was that Socrates right? Socrates was ruining. He was ruining younger people, right? He was confusing them. He was corrupt. He was the main accusation about Socrates was the main charges on Socrates was that the charges were this. This is just ridiculous, for corrupting the youth of Athens. Can you imagine that? The charges against Socrates was impiety, but the most essential thing was over this one. What is the most interesting one was this charge. The charge was corrupting the youths of Athens, right? So, but the thing is this: what this passage is hinting at, or trying to say, or enlighten us, is simply this. Whenever you pinpoint those things, and perhaps in life, people like to hear things which are not true. People like to hear things which are false, right? They don't like to hear things which are true. So they usually, right, most usually, they usually pinpoint to the fact that it's easier to believe a lie than to accept the truth, right? So the story of this debate, right? Okay, the story of this debate between the doctor and the pastry chef, i.e., sweets, somebody who makes sweets and desserts, whatnot. So the doctor is brought. He is to be judged by children, right? Children, they don't like doctors, right? They don't like medicine, but children love pastries. They love sweets. They love desserts, right? So when the sweet maker, when the pastry chef accuses the doctor to the children, this man is an evil man, right? He will not let you eat whatever you want to eat. While me, on the other hand, I will give you whatever you want, right? On top of that, it's sweet, chocolate, desserts, pastries, all for you. So the thing is, even in reality, whom would the children, side with? Obviously, the pastry chef, right? The ones who give them sweets, right? Right? Yes, of course. So much in the same way, even in society, even in this adult world, right? People prefer to be lied to, right? I suppose that's the frailty of human nature, right? Which Socrates is trying to enlighten us with. He's trying to show the weaknesses of human nature, right? That sometimes we like to believe a lie, right? Sometimes we go with leaders who promises to give us all the things that we desire and need. Of course, the leader will never give you what you need and what you desire, but then he promises to give you those things. While on the other hand, in politics, right? In politics, that's how it works, right? The politicians will lie to you, and then you believe, even though you know that the politicians are lying, you still believe them, and you vote for them. Especially in democracies, you vote for them and you get them elected, but then they will never fulfill their promises, right? But can you imagine this? Just imagine this. Using this example of Socrates, right, about the passage which we have discussed, right? He says about the pastry chef. So similarly, so imagine this, right? Just imagine this. What do you think, right? Imagine this. Here in Nagaland, it has become a custom, right? It is a custom and tradition, right? It has become a custom and a tradition that in election, whenever you go, if you are a candidate, the surest of ways to win an election here in Nagaland is that you have lots of money, right? The more money you spend, that more or less guarantees that you win, right? Why? Because why? The reason is because you get to buy the votes, right? You get to buy the votes. You give the people money. You say, I don't care, I'm not going to give it. Obviously, the candidates will never say, I will not bring development and advancements. But then what they say is that, here, I'll give you 10,000 rupees, 20,000 rupees, 40,000 rupees here, right? And then people sell their votes like that. So can you imagine a debate, right? Can you imagine two candidates? one who has lots of money and says, you know what, here, I'll give you 10,000 rupees, I'll give you 20,000 rupees, vote for me, right? And the other person says, you know what, I will not give you money, right? I will not give you money, nor should you expect any money from me, right? Rather, if you vote for me, I will bring development, I will bring advancement and progress, I will increase, I will advance the welfare of the society, I will bring higher standards of living for you and for your children, right? Now the thing is this, whom will the voters vote for? Right? Whom do you think the voters will vote for? Do you think the voters will vote for the person who says, I won't give you money? Or do you think the voters will go and vote for the person who gives them money? Right? So it's obvious, just like the debate between, just like the contest between the doctor and the sweet seller. Same thing. Obviously, the candidate who gives the voters the money will obviously win. And much in the same way in Nagaland election, right? Almost all the candidates who spends a lot do win the election. So much in the same way. So I hope you see, my dear students, I hope you see how relevant what Socrates was dealing with, right? Those issues which he was dealing with 2,000 years ago, we are still dealing with those issues even to this day, right? It's never ending, right? The problems is there, right? The problems of politics is there, and I suppose it falls upon us as individuals and as persons to maybe start tackling these issues, to maybe start thinking maybe there's something that we have to do, because it has been going on for so long. But well, it's up to you. But then, nevertheless, that's what you should be. That's the issue which Socrates was dealing with. And as you can see, Socrates was imprisoned. Some false, trumped up charges, right? Again, for corrupting the youths. I do not know what that was. But then in the end, he was put to death, right? So as you can see on your screen, right, that's the last days of Socrates. There he goes, he's drinking the poison, right? He drinks the poison, voluntarily drinks the poison, and he dies. You see, imagine the person trying to enlighten the people, trying to make aware to the citizens of Athenians, to everybody, what a good life is, right? How to lead one's life. And then there you go. People don't like it, right? People don't like it. He was put to prison, right? And then even his friends actually came and told him, let's escape. But Socrates says, no, I will not escape, right? And then he courageously, right, drank the poison, and that's how he died, right? Sad, very sad. That's what happens. That's the fate that awaits anybody who tries to show the ignorance of the leaders, right? Right? So there you go. So what a sad story. But nevertheless, that's what that's what it is, right? And so the thing about it's very essential that we appreciate what Socrates has been trying to show us, and also Socrates has been trying to make us aware of. These issues these issues which we are speaking of in our class, right, in this lecture, they are not to be taken lightly, right? Because it can actually cost lives, right? It's a matter of life and death. Whatever we are discussing in these lectures, please don't take it lightly, because they are not supposed to be taken lightly. These are some of the most essential questions, right? As long as we are human beings, and as long as we live in a society, and as long as we have politics, we are always going to deal with these issues, right? So we should never deal with these things lightly. Nor should you take these things lightly either, right? So this is something which is very, very sad, but what to do, right? That's life. So, but on a sad note, let's move on. Let's move on, right? So here we are. Socrates also brings about, he tries to show the human fallibility, right? The human weakness of human nature, right? He is not those what you call it, those idealistic idiots, right? Who thinks that everything is fine, perfect, right? But it's not like that. You see, here we have a passage which I want to read, right? Together with you, and then to find out, to show you what it is. You see, for Socrates, laws are very important, right? Laws is what distinguishes, is what differentiates the civilized from the barbarians, according to him. And he has a point. After all, civilization, society, political organizations, political society is not possible without some sort of law. But then, but regardless of how good a law is, for Socrates, it can never be perfect, right? Because and that imperfection of law, whatever law that we have in society, no matter how perfect in our eyes it may be, it's never that perfect, because it reflects the fallibility of human nature, right? And then let's let's read this passage, and then we'll get a point. What he is speaking of, right? So here we go. So here's young Socrates, and he is speaking with one visitor. And then here we have to pay attention to what the young Socrates says, but to the visitor. And this is where it gets interesting. So young Socrates, the rest of it, visitor, seems to have been said in due measure, but that ideal rule may exist even without laws. Was something harder for a hearer to accept. The visitor says, "You got in just a little before me with your question, Socrates, for I was about to ask you whether you accept all of this, or whether, in fact, you find any of the things we have said difficult to take. But as it is, it's already apparent that we'll want a discussion of this matter, of the correctness of those who rule without laws. Quite. Now, in a certain sense, it is clear that the art of legislator belongs to that of the king. But the best thing is not that the law should prevail, but rather the kingly man who possesses wisdom. Do you know why? What then is the reason?" The visitor says, "That law could never accurately embrace what is best and most just for all at the same time, and so prescribe what is best. For the dissimilarities between human beings and their actions, and the fact that practically nothing in human affairs ever remains stable, prevent any sort of expertise whatsoever from making any simple decision in any sphere that covers all cases and will last for all time. I suppose this is something we agree about, certainly. But we see law bending itself more or less toward this very thing. It resembles some self-willed and ignorant person who allows no one to do anything contrary to what he orders, nor to ask any questions about it, not even if, after all, something new turns out for someone which is better, contrary to the prescription which he himself has laid down." Young Socrates says, "True. The law does absolutely as you have just said with regard to each and every one of us." The visitor replies, "Then it is impossible for what is perpetually simple to be useful in relation to what is never simple." Very likely. The visitor continues, "Why then is it ever necessary to make law? Given that law is not something completely correct, we must find out the causes of this, certainly. Now with you too, people trained in groups, right? People trained in groups in the way they do in other cities, whether for running or for anything else, for competitive purposes. Yes, very frequently. Well, now let's recall to mind the instructions that expert trainers give when they are in charge of people in such circumstances. What are you thinking of? That they don't suppose there is room for them to make their prescriptions piece by piece to suit each individual, given the instruction appropriate to the physical condition of each. They regard it as necessary to make rougher prescriptions about what will bring physical benefit as suits the majority of cases in a large number of people. Right. And it's just for this reason, that, as it were, they give equally heavy exercises to the group as a whole, starting them off together, stopping them together in their running, wrestling, and the rest of the physical exercises. That's so. Then, let's suppose the same about the legislator too. The person who will direct his herds in relation to justice and their contracts with one another, he will never be capable in prescribing for everyone together, of assigning accurately to each individual what is appropriate for him. What you say certainly sounds reasonable. The visitor ends. Instead, he will, I think, set down the law for each and everyone according to the principle of for the majority of people, for the majority of cases, and roughly somehow like this, whether expressing it in writing or in unwritten form, legislating by means of ancestral customs. Alright. As from the passage, as the passage suggests, we find that what's this conversation between the visitor and the young Socrates gives us insights not only to the frailty of human nature, but also something of a truism, right? Something which is true in every sense of the word, right? Here the visitor was saying that laws can never be just, right? Laws can never be just, as it says over here, right? It can never be just. It can never be just and best for all, right? It cannot be a law. Whenever you make a law, right, for a society, that law is good only for certain, only not for all the population, not for all the people in society, but for the majority of the people, not for all. And think about this. What do you think of this? No, what do you think of the conversation between Socrates and the visitor? The topic of the conversation was law, and the topic was that law, no matter how perfect it is never complete, right? It can never be completely just, and it can never be completely best for everybody. It can be good. It can be beneficial for the majority of the people, but not for all. Not for all. For the majority, maybe, but not for all. And just think about this system, right? For example, say for instance, the Indian Constitution is a good example to start, right? So in the Indian Constitution, for example, we have, for instance, Article 371A, right? That gives special benefits to the state of Nagaland and the people dwelling in that state. So, according to Article 371A, it entitles the people of Nagaland, right, the Nagas tribe under the tribe under the state of Nagaland, certain benefits that in the state of Nagaland, no outsiders can buy the land, right, in the state, right. Then all the law and order issues, the law and order shall follow the customary laws of the tribes, and all the resources and natural resources and the minerals rights, all will belong to the people, right? So now, that is good for majority of the Nagas, majority of the people in Nagaland, but it is not good for the other Indians, right? Right? Say for instance, even if say for instance, a person from Assam who is a citizen of India, much like a person in Nagaland who is also a citizen of India, cannot enjoy the same benefits as a citizen of Nagaland, right? So it works for the for the people in Nagaland, but it does not work for the other person, for the person from Assam. You see, so I hope you're getting the point. You see, that's true. In other words, what the conversation was between Socrates and the visitor is true. Whenever you make law, The law will never benefit everybody. It will only benefit the majority, but then not all, right? You can never expect that. Why? Because the human society, the human individuals, the human persons are too diverse, are too different, right? And too mercurial, right? And too mercurial to have any sort of law that is permanent, that is static, that works for everybody, that works for all, right? It's not possible. Much in the same way, the quota system, right? The quota system that gives ST and SC people certain benefits to job, right? Certain job benefits. So now the quota system works for almost all, like for the majority of ST of categories of people in ST and SC class, right? However, the other remaining citizens of India, right, who does not belong to SC and ST, cannot enjoy the benefits. Moreover, even within the SC and ST category, right, not all the people who belongs to ST can enjoy those benefits. Not all the people who belongs to SC category can enjoy those benefits, right? But again, because of socioeconomic differences, right? Socioeconomic differences and whatnot, it makes a whole lot of difference. Much in the same way, just because I belong to an ST tribe, just because I belong to an ST category, doesn't mean that I can enjoy all the benefits, right? That comes under ST, that comes under the quota system, right? So here we go. So whenever you make law, like Socrates was discussing in this dialogue, law, no matter how just in the eyes of man, it can never be perfect that works for all. Nor can it be just, right? It cannot be just at all. It can be just to a certain extent, to a certain degree, but it cannot be just, right? It can be a bit just. It can be to a certain degree, but not the perfect just. It can never be like that, right? So it's like this. It's like, I can to give a better explanation. Maybe, perhaps, I can explain this by using an analogy, right? For instance, all of you once say for instance, I run a driving school, right? All of you don't know how to drive, right? You don't know how to drive, so all of you, right? All of you come and take admission in my driving school, and then I say, you know what? From now on, you step one, I will teach you how to drive in various stages, right? In stage 1, I will teach you how to start a car, right? In stage 2, I will teach you how to change gear, right? Yes or no? And in stage 3, I will teach you how to drive the car, right? So say for instance, for example, that you know how to drive the car. Say for instance, you know how to start a car, right? You know how to start a car, and you know how to change the gear. Now you only want to know how to drive the car. But then I say to you, no. I cannot let you, drive the car without making you go through those first stage and second stage, right? Are you getting my point? Are you following my point? That's what law is. That's the whole point of this argument. That's the whole point of this conversation. In other words, sometimes law works for some people and it doesn't work for others. Even though whenever you make laws, no matter how just and perfect it seems at that point of time, when it is at that point of time, it is never just. It is never good for all. It only works for majority of the people. Just like you know how to start a car, you know how to change the gear, but then you don't know how to drive. And then I'm like, no, because you have to. Because because in my driving school, first I must teach you how to start a car, and then I must teach you how to change the gear. And only then will I teach you how to drive. Even if you know how to start a car and change the gear, I cannot and will not allow you to drive the car, right? Unless you are taught by me, right? And then unless I show you how to start the car, right? How to change the gear, and then only then will I teach you how to drive. So it is unfair to you, right? It is so unfair to you. So much in the same way, that's what law is according to Socrates. Why? Because Law is like this, no matter how just, or because of human limitations, right? The fallibility of human nature. And it also says something about Socrates, because this says a lot about Socrates. Why? Because he is not an idiot, right? He's not stupid, because he knows that human beings can never be perfect. So no matter how perfect a system may be right now, it is bound to be corrupted, right? The corruptibility of human nature makes so that nothing will be perfect, nothing will stay the same, right? It will change for worse, right? It will change for worse. Even if you have a good law now, it is bound to be corrupted, right? Even if you have a good politicians now, later on, the later generation politicians may be corrupt, very, very corrupt. So societies, politics, and political systems are bound to be corrupted, right? Now or in the future. But in the end, ultimately, the main message, right, the key message of Socrates is simply that, it's simply this, right? It's simply this. We should never underestimate the power of knowledge, right? And how essential it is, because it is what, say, for instance, differentiates us to realize that sometimes, it is the way to make us see the reality. And also, whenever you start questioning, right? Whenever you start questioning, no matter how offensive it may be for others, it is beyond it is bound up as a human being to ask these questions, because as he says, an unexamined life is not worth living. So you have to examine your life. So ultimately, once you start examining your life, right? You will see the world, I suppose you can say that. You will see the world in a new perspective, right? And of course, once you examine yourself, you will begin to examine everything. And ultimately, that's the ultimate message, right? Question, examine, don't accept things blindly, right? Don't just accept things because it comes to you from your tribe, or from your politicians, or from leaders. Question is very very essential. Examine. So I will end this lecture and on Socrates per se. Examine your life, right? Examine your life.